ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. I realize I sort of go ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode number 275. And today we have a question about machine guns, allegedly. I can't find it. It was supposed to be on episode 222, but it might have been changed into a different comment. I wrote that it was, or it might have been deleted. I wrote that it was posted by Dean, and I just wrote machine guns. So, I'm assuming there was a question that was asked about machine guns. Dean, you can verify if you actually did write that at one point, or I'm losing my mind. Either way, it's my fault, or it's this piece of paper's fault, and I'm blaming the piece of paper, and also you. So, the concept of using machine guns against zombies is not really a sound one. Just to lead with that, for those who are, maybe new, I talk about zombie physiology a lot, and one of the big things is you pretty much have to go for the headshot. If you don't go for the headshot, you don't do a whole lot of damage. Unless you break bones and they collapse, or you really shatter some muscle or whatever, zombies don't feel pain, so it's really, really hard to incapacitate them, and moreover, they don't really use their internal organs that much, so if you damage them, you're not doing anything. Zombies do, slowly break down on their own accord, and yeah, if you break a zombie's leg, it's going to be sort of shambling on the ground, crawling or whatever. It will try to walk on that leg and fail. Zombies don't really learn, so, they work off of some basic human instincts, as well as just sort of brute force. It's a very brute force approach to life that a zombie lives. And so, because of that, because of the fact that they feel no pain, they will just keep coming at you until they get you, unless they are totally incapacitated, again by destroying the brain. So, use of machine guns on the zombie train, in particular, was limited. A, because I talked about our ammo issues last episode, I believe, or a couple of episodes ago. Not last episode, because that was a review, but, a couple of episodes ago, at least. And going through a lot of ammunition at once was never something that we wanted to do unless we were getting a similar number of kills for it. It was the kind of thing where we didn't want to have to stock up often, we didn't want to have to run around begging for ammo, and we really, really didn't want to run out ever. So, firing willy-nilly was not something great, something that we would do often. So, we did have use for machine guns, though, and now that I'm past the this is why they're bad, let's talk about why they're good. They still work on people, first of all, not that we had huge hordes of people to deal with all the time, but just the fact that we couldn't, that we had people to deal with, and the fact that they're also really good sort of weapons of fear. You're firing off a machine gun at the enemy, they're probably gonna turn and run away. They're not going to necessarily keep running if they know that you have overwhelming firepower. And it was good. It was effective, and it was something that we tended to whip out in situations when we really knew that there was going to be a problem, where intimidation was definitely a factor as well. And, because of that, yeah, we did use some weapons that we had, like M2s and stuff like that, M2 Brownings, that were mounted, and we used them to effect, but not often. Again, only when we were dealing with humans, and only when we felt like it would really be a good idea to lay down a lot of fire, whether that be for intimidation, which it was most of the time, or because we were facing a lot of people. There were only a couple of times where there were groups large and organized enough to take us on in that way, and it isn't something I'm really the most proud of talking about, because those were other survivors, those were other humans. They were individuals and groups that I really think it would have been in everyone's best interest to get along with, because it's not like these monsters were out there killing before the war. It's just they were a product of the war, and I can hardly blame them, in fact. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for somebody who was effectively a warlord, but there were much fewer of those, and many more of people who thought they were doing the right thing by trying to take our resources, because they thought that their people were more desperate, and, didn't, I don't know. I can't defend them very much, I can't look into their psyche very much, but the fact of the matter is, we would have worked with just about anyone had they come to us with, under the pretenses of working together. So, it's regrettable the amount of lives that we on the zombie train had to take, and I know sometimes I sort of glorify our victories over people like the Band of Guardians and stuff like that, but the fact of the matter is that even under a regime like that, or especially under a regime like that, most of the people who are fighting are not fighting because they believe in the cause, they're fighting because they're doing what they're told. And they're fighting because they think that their superior knows best. And most of the time, I can reason with that. I can understand that, because there were times on the zombie train where I had to make some hard calls, and if I didn't have people behind me, 100%, if I didn't have people behind me in the way that I would hope people would be behind me, in a sort of, not necessarily unquestioning, but at least a, in the moment, taking orders and doing them sort of way, then we would not have gotten as far as we did. Off the top of my head, I don't know, my brain's a little cloudy, I can't think of times where that really, really paid off the top of my head, but it did. Probably any time that there was some serious danger. Hurricane Firefall, where we were running from New Orleans. Even right around the beginning where we had to leave Scranton, when we were all, seriously greenhorns, we were totally new to this whole zombie apocalypse thing, as was everybody else. And we sort of were just trying to do whatever it took to survive, and the unquestioning, like, yeah, we're gonna break into that market and take everything that's in it. Yeah, it's the apocalypse. This is what we have to do, sort of thing. And I didn't feel good saying that. When that happened, I hardly felt good saying that. But it was a desperation thing, and the fact that everyone sort of said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. It gave me a lot of confidence, and I think it got us through a lot of situations where we couldn't have made it otherwise, especially if there was any real debate over what to do in a situation. So, that isn't to say we didn't stop and figure things out, because whenever we had time, we often did. But when it came down to making a hard call, it was usually myself that made the call. And then after that call was made, we didn't usually go back on it. We didn't stop and think about it more. It was just this is what we're doing now. If it's a mistake, then it's a mistake, and we can't change that. So even, I don't know, leaving people behind, stuff like that. We never wanted to leave people behind. Even if they were somebody who we were questionable about. It was hard towards the beginning to avoid picking up Quislings, which are the people that are people. They're still human, but they think that they're zombie, or they're mentally broken enough to believe that they are. And it's sometimes tough to avoid that, and it's even tougher to avoid, it's even tougher to avoid kicking yourself when you realize that was a human being. They were just so broken that they didn't, they'd basically gone feral. I don't know. It's a lot to bring up. It's a lot to think about. I don't think about it too often. I don't know how I got down this track when I'm talking about machine guns, but I don't know. It's a damn shame. It was a war. It was a war. It was post-apocalyptic. It was, the simplest thing is it was the end of the world as we knew it, and we were scavengers just like so many other people. And until much later, we were not any better than that. We were, running around through the woods, through the plains, just picking up anything we could get our hands on. Ammunition, people even, food especially. Going lengths without, things like decent electricity sometimes when things broke down, or hot water, or, even necessarily fresh water. When we were running out in the Midwest, which didn't happen very often, we only went through a couple of times. Leibold is more accustomed to this than we are, but sometimes you would have to forego your clean, fresh water supply for the sake of keeping the engine running. And you'd think that's kind of backwards. You want to keep the people alive first and keep the engine running second. But when your engine's your only hope to actually get somewhere, and when nobody's going to show up and rescue you if you call 911, the movement is really what saves your life. And to bring it back around to the defense of the train, running away probably did us more favors in the long run than any of the shooting ever did. There were many, many times where we just, we found odds we couldn't face, we piled up everybody into the train as fast as we could, and we took off down the tracks. We didn't even necessarily know where we were going. We just needed to get the hell out of Dodge. The nice thing about zombies is they don't go very fast, and even though they will come at you at all hours of the day, and they will never stop, they won't, they won't run after you, that's for sure, and they'll never catch up to a speeding train. So, there were some times where we ran through the night just to put ourselves far enough away from zombies, partially because we would run through an area where we thought we could stop and there'd just be more trouble. So we'd keep going. And then we would finally be able to rest, and I'd sleep through a day or whatever and get back on the road later, whenever we thought we had trouble. And there were times when we would keep the fire stoked because we knew they weren't too far away. We knew they weren't too far away, and we knew that they would show up within a couple of hours. So, I would, the fire would be stoked, I would take a cat nap, and, then when they showed up at the edges of our vision, which we would park in a place where the sniper could see far, we'd maybe make a couple of pot shots at them and then just keep running. Usually there was an end game. The kind of thing, the sort of thing is, when you start running away from a bunch of zombies, you know that they're more than likely going to chase you, and they're going to keep chasing you until they've found you, or until they're dead. So, unless something's in between you two to distract them, which we would try sometimes, we would leave a timed device to blow up, or, make a noise or whatever, which would distract all the zombies, and then they'd forget about you because they don't exactly have long memories. If they're not fixated on something at that moment, they will forget what they were supposed to be going after. If a zombie sees you, and he starts chasing you, and then you run behind a building or a wall, and in the meantime the zombie sees somebody else, they're going to forget you ever existed. They just don't have the cognitive capacity to acknowledge that you ever existed. So, if they don't see anybody else, they will just come for you, because they remember that much. They know, I'm going for the person who's right here. But they can only remember, I guess, one target at a time. So the moment that there's another target on their radar, somebody that's a little bit more obvious, they'll just go after that person immediately and not ever worry about you again. So we would either, leave something for them to keep them distracted. That was a pretty short-term solution. We'd lead them back to a base where I knew that they could, take out a group of whatever size was following us, or we'd get them to a place where we could set up some defenses and pick them all off one by one. But using mostly single-shot rifles, not like we wouldn't use automatic rifles set on single shot, but I'm saying that when fighting zombies, it's in your best interest to use a single shot per zombie in the head. Train man out.